The United States kept saying he wanted to annex Canada as the 51st state, and Canadians took it personally. This was not organized by the Canadian government. This was not mandated by law. This was 20 million people individually deciding that if Trump views them with contempt, they will spend their money somewhere that actually wants them. And the economic damage is so severe that American senators are traveling to Ottawa begging for the boycott to end. Congressional committees are publishing reports documenting the devastation. Welcome to the unintended consequences of insulting your largest source of international tourism, where rhetoric has a price tag measured in billions, and Trump's need to dominate allies is costing American workers their jobs. But tonight, we are showing you the scale of Canada's tourism boycott, which American communities are suffering the most, and why this represents a fundamental shift in how Canadians view their relationship with the United States that will outlast Trump's presidency. Let's start with the scale of economic damage that Trump's rhetoric created. The United States Travel Association forecasted a 3.2% decline in international tourism spending for 2025. $5.7 billion in losses compared to the previous year. And they attribute the decline primarily to one factor: Canadians are not coming anymore. Canadians are the largest group of international tourists to the United States, 28% of all foreign visitors, $20.5 billion in spending in 2024 alone. 20.4 million visitors crossing the border annually to shop, vacation, visit family, and support American businesses. And in 2025, that river of tourism dollars became a trickle. October data from Statistics Canada shows return trips by Canadians to the United States dropped 24% for air travel and 30% for land travel compared to the same month in 2024. Not down a few points, down by a quarter to a third. Road travel from Canada fell 38% in May, air travel down 22% in June, the fifth consecutive month of year-over-year declines, each month worse than the one before as the boycott momentum built. Border crossings between January and October declined nearly 20% overall, with some states seeing drops as large as 27%. This is not random fluctuation, this is systematic avoidance. A Longwoods International study in April found that 60% of Canadians were less likely to travel to the United States in the next year due to American policies, trade practices, and political statements. Of those, 36% had already canceled planned trips. An Angus Reid survey in mid-February found that 48% of Canadians had already canceled or were seriously likely to cancel or delay plans to travel to the United States. In Quebec, of the 20% who had plans to travel to the United States in 2025, 45% either already canceled or intended to cancel. That represents an estimated $3 billion in economic losses for the United States just from one Canadian province. These are not hypothetical numbers. These are actual trips canceled, actual hotel rooms empty, actual restaurant tables unfilled, actual stores without customers. And the American tourism industry is in crisis. A Congressional Joint Economic Committee report published in December documented the devastation state by state with data and testimonials from business owners whose livelihoods depend on Canadian tourism. New Hampshire saw a 30% decrease in Canadian visitors. State-run campground reservations down 71% in the first 5 months of 2025. One hotel owner in North Conway reported 30% of rooms empty during summer weekends that usually sell out. Maine business owners described catastrophic losses. Old Orchard Beach reported a 50% drop in Canadian visitors, the worst year we have had. We have never had a year like that, even worse than COVID, said business owner Moshe Agam. Montana, where Canadians accounted for nearly 80% of international visitors in 2024 and contributed $170 million to the state economy, saw border crossings down 19% in the first 10 months of 2025. One hotel reported a $38,000 loss after a Canadian sports team canceled its reservation for 70 rooms and a 200-person dinner. Diane Medler, executive director of Discover Kalispell in Montana, stated businesses noticed a 25% decrease in Canadian travel in spring and a 44% drop later in the year. credit card spending in Kalispell plunged 39% in 2025 compared to the previous year. Florida, one of the top destinations for Canadian snowbirds, saw visitor numbers plummet 20% in the second quarter and 17% in the first quarter. Real estate agents reported Canadians putting homes up for sale due to the current environment between Canada and the United States, with Canadians representing 15 to 20% of buyers in some markets. Hawaii experienced a 9.4% decline in Canadian visitors in the first 7 months of 2025 compared to 2024, and a 27% decline compared to pre-pandemic 2019 levels. Spending by Canadian visitors fell 4.9% from $668 million to a lower figure. Restaurants reported noticeable declines, with one stating that Canadian arrivals to Maui were down 28% compared to 2019. Vermont accommodations, New Jersey campgrounds, Niagara Falls hotels all reported similar stories. Bookings down, revenues down, staff cuts. Economic pain spreading through communities that built their business models around reliable Canadian tourism. The congressional report concluded, going back for generations, Canadians have visited many states along the United States-Canada border to see family or friends, stay in our hotels, share a meal at our restaurants, and shop at our stores. However, in the wake of President Trump's reckless tariffs and needless provocations, fewer and fewer Canadians are making trips to the United States, putting many American businesses in jeopardy. The boycott is not about spreadsheets and economic models. It is about individual Canadians making conscious choices to avoid the United States because Trump made them feel unwelcome in a country many considered a second home. Lena Yusufi, a Vancouver attorney, typically visits Hawaii 4 or 5 times a year. She used to live in Maui and was considering buying a 2-bedroom condo there. But after Trump imposed tariffs and repeated his wish to turn Canada into the 51st state, she canceled her trips. Obviously, out of loyalty to Canada and our values and just holding our ground, we had to cancel. A woman from British Columbia forfeited a $5,000 deposit to cancel a 5-week vacation to Palm Springs. Not rescheduled, canceled. Taking a $5,000 loss rather than spend money in the United States, a Florida motel owner reported, "I have seen a customer dropping a $1,000 deposit to choose to go to Cuba instead." Canadians are choosing Cuba, a country under American sanctions, over Florida because they would rather support a Caribbean island than give money to Trump's America. One retiree from Cobourg, Ontario, had traveled to Orlando, Florida to play golf every winter for 20 years. In March, he canceled his annual trip and stated he would not return while Trump was in office. By December, his position had not changed. Still no change. Not going back. Lorna Hunt, CEO of the tour company Great Canadian Holidays, stated that most of the firm's United States tours are dead in the water because Canadian customers backed out. The anger is not with the American people, the anger is with Donald Trump. And the feeling is that if he is going to go to war with Canada, something we never asked for, an economic war, then why on earth would they spend a nickel in the United States when they don't have to? That sentiment is echoed across Canada. An Ipsos poll in early February found that 68% of Canadians thought less of the United States after Trump announced tariffs, not disagreed with policy. Thought less of the country itself? This is not temporary political disagreement. This is fundamental reassessment of whether the United States deserves Canadian money, Canadian tourism, and Canadian goodwill. The boycott is not keeping Canadians home. It is redirecting them to destinations that actually welcome them. A Snowbird Advisor survey found that 70% of Canadian snowbirds plan to visit the United States this winter, down from 82% last year. But 23% plan international destinations other than the United States, up from 12% who did so last winter. The number planning overseas travel nearly doubled. Mexico, Costa Rica, warmer European countries are all benefiting from Canadians looking for winter sunshine without the political baggage of supporting Trump. The Caribbean is seeing increased bookings. Even Cuba is gaining Canadian tourists who used to go to Florida. and many Canadians are simply traveling within Canada. Provincial governments noted increased interest from Canadian tourists and deployed new advertising campaigns encouraging domestic travel. Manitoba increased the budget of Tourism Manitoba by $4.5 million, specifically to capture Canadians who might otherwise have gone to the United States. This internal redirection has economic benefits for Canada, while simultaneously denying revenue to American businesses. Canadians are not sacrificing vacations. They are spending their money at home or in countries that treat them with respect. The shift is so significant that duty-free shops at the border, which depend on Canadians crossing to shop in the United States, reported sales declines of 40 to 50% between January and April. One Surrey-based owner of a duty-free shop stated, "Our business has dropped over 80%, and now we have reduced our staff and reduced our working hours." This morning we are operating on a skeleton staff of only 3 to 4 people, when usually we have about 20 people working. 80% decline. From 20 staff to 3 or 4. That is not a downturn. That is collapse. American tourism boards and businesses, watching billions in revenue disappear, have launched increasingly desperate campaigns to lure Canadians back. Montana, after initially abandoning Canadian tourism campaigns in summer when they received negative reactions, is trying again with a Canadian welcome pass offering discounts on hotels, restaurants, and attractions exclusively for Canadian visitors. "We miss you," the campaign pleads. Las Vegas rolled out week-long sales with special tourism discounts targeting Canadians. Buffalo, Seattle, Upstate, New York all launched campaigns with deals, trying to demonstrate they still value Canadian visitors. Palm Springs put up signs across downtown reading "Palm Springs loves Canada," with the mayor noting Canadians spend $300 million a year in the region. California launched an entire state tourism campaign encouraging Canadians to visit. These are not normal marketing efforts. These are emergency responses to economic crisis. American communities that depend on Canadian tourism are begging them to come back, offering discounts and reassurances that they are still welcome even if the president treats them with contempt. But the campaigns are not working because the issue is not price or convenience. The issue is that Trump spent a year telling Canadians they are not a real country, they should be annexed, they exist only to serve American interests, and you cannot discount your way out of that insult. Senator Maggie Hassan, ranking member of the congressional committee that published the report on Canadian tourism losses, stated, "In the wake of President Trump's reckless tariffs and needless provocations, fewer and fewer Canadians are making trips to the United States." Hassan was part of a 4-senator delegation that traveled to Ottawa in July to meet with Prime Minister Mark Carney and discuss the damage. American senators going to Canada to apologize for their president's behavior and plead for economic relief. But the political damage is done, and the economic consequences are accelerating. The United States Travel Association estimates that even a 10% reduction in Canadian tourism means $2.1 billion in lost spending and 14,000 American jobs at risk. Current data suggests the actual decline is significantly worse than 10%. Tourism economics forecasts that if the trade war expands to include not just Canada but Mexico, China, and Europe, the result could be a $22 billion loss in tourism revenue from international visitors. $22 billion, and much of that would come from Canadian boycott effects rippling through the industry. The broader travel sector is projecting a $70 billion travel trade deficit for 2025. The United States historically enjoyed a travel trade surplus, more international tourists coming in than Americans traveling abroad. Trump's policies have reversed that completely. This matters because tourism is not like manufacturing, where you can just restart production when conditions improve. Tourists who develop new vacation patterns, discover new destinations, build new traditions, do not automatically return when political tensions ease. Canadians who spent